Well, folks, welcome back to Random Rod Shop. Well, today we're going to get back on all sort of projects. We're going to work on we're going to shorten the Silverado axle 6 inches so we can put it underneath our 67 pickup. This is what we're going to end up with. This is a disc brake axle, 6 slug. You know, you get done, you'll be able to go to Napa, get parts for it, and it fits in with the 67 theme in terms, you know, it looks factory. First thing we're going to get going here is my little rolly cart that I've used over the years for just about everything, but predominantly initially when I found this, I had it set up for to mount an axle on so I could shorten an axle. So I've got a big pipe vise here. This pipe vise is big enough to clamp that axle. So that'll keep the housing wherever you want it. On this side, I need a chair of some sort. I'm thinking this angle iron, you know, piece of John Deere something. So I need to get the axle housing set in here so that we can, you know, keep this alignment right. And so I can get the height, and then we could just weld on a stanchion there, and we'll be on our way. Let me get the axle housing in here. I decided that since that turned out to be 2 inches, I would just put a bar in there, because once you clamp this thing down, it's not moving. And I've got it set up so it's pretty level. The reason I set that level is so we don't have to work so hard in terms of where these ends are. Let me show you. Now when we go to put these ends back on, we just have to use a level to put the ends back on. All right, well, you noticed I already got this thing cleaned up. If you've never cleaned up an axle before, that takes longer than everything else involved with this process. I bet I spent, I don't know, 3 hours yesterday grinding on this thing. You can use a plasma cutter to get them off, but you still got to grind the brackets down. It feels like I've still got a little more cleaning to do on this before it's ready. But at this point, it's good enough for me to cut them apart. I think I said the Silverado axle is 6 inches wider than the 1967, give or take. The axles I ordered are 3 inches shorter than a stock Silverado axle. So my plan is to do nothing more than to take 3 inches out of this tube and 3 inches out of that tube, weld them back together, and put the axles in, and Bob's your uncle, and we're done. Let me take you back to the table for a minute, and let's talk about what we're going to do. Here's the plan. We're going to cut 3 inches out of that axle tube on each side. Then, where the carrier bearing is, on each side. So we're going to take the third member out. Actually, the third member is already out of this axle housing. This is going to go in place of the carrier bearings. And these are going to go where the axle bearings are. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the axle bearing. I've already got one out, but I'm going to pull the other one out. Sometimes it's not convenient to do that, but a little bit of heat goes a long way in getting a bearing out of there. This puller I've had, it's kind of a universal puller. I've had this thing for a long time. I have a set of those that you get at Harbor Freight. And while the idea is good, the metal in those things are not that great. If I found a set of forged axle bearing pullers, I might get those, but this seems to work pretty well. Right? It's a pretty slick puller. I don't even know if it's got a name on it. I don't see anything, but it works pretty well. All right, so there's the axle bearing. So this process is pretty simple. I've got, this is an 1.5-inch bar. I actually, before I could make my own, I made these yesterday. But before I could make my own, I ordered a set, and this is from Lead Mine Products, and it's a 1.25-inch shaft. So I've got an 1.25-inch shaft, and then I've got some bushings to convert the 1.5-inch hole to 1.25-inch if, you know, mix and match. I think I've got the bushings here to do 10-bolt Chevy, 12-bolt Chevy, 8/8, Mopars. I think the 7.5s and the 7.8 Fords. Don't know. I doubt that I'm going to be shortening one of those. But now that I've got the axle bearings for these Silverados, we should be good to go with about anything we want to do. So, get back on track here. So the idea is you get all these bushings put in, you get the rod put in, and then when you slip the cut axle ends on, that rod is going to ensure that things are straight. Now, from experience, I can tell you, I'm not sure the specs on a rear axle from the factory is, quote, straight. Because all of the welding they do on that, it's going to push and pull, and the axle isn't going to be exactly straight. So when you go to put this back together, this 1.5-inch rod it's not going to bend. So I've had issues in the past when you decide to put this rod back in after you welded it all back up, right? That this rod won't go in. And so you gotta heat the sides of the axle tubes and cool them and get them to come back around. It's not much, but there is some flexibility in the factory system. There is no flexibility in this system. That's really the only problem I've ever come up with is that axle tube isn't straight, hands down. With all the welding they've done on it, and then you're going to come back and you're going to weld on it too. It's not going to be straight. You may have to heat it up. We'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky this time, and this after I get it welded up, this thing will come together. The issue is, you can weld it up with this rod in there, and then you drive the rod out. Then when you go put it back, just to check everything, you put the rod back in and see if everything's gonna fit. Let's see. I think we're ready. I'm gonna mark 3 inches out. Well, I'll set the camera up over there, and we're gonna kind of decide where we need the 3 inches out at. I think we're gonna go look at the factory axle and see how far inboard the chairs are on the factory 67 axle. So I'll get the camera down. Let's go out there and have a look at this. Well, the sun isn't real happy. All right, so I just want to know about where it's at. So let's go about 6 1/4 to 9. That'll be pretty close. And I think center line on this axle is like 42 inches. So I'm gonna pull from I'm gonna pull from the edge here, across the other one. So I got about a little over 40 there, and it's about an inch or so to the center, so we'll call it about 42 inches. I don't think that's the exact number, but that'll be pretty close. All right, so we're going to take 3 inches out of the axle. So the 6 1/4 and the 9 we measured out there, that's like 9 1/4 and 12. Other side. All right. So that should be right. Just for giggles, let's see what I've got in the center line. Well, I'm showing 40 there. You know what? I better look this up. See if I mismeasured. Well, I'm glad I looked that up. It made me remember something. The axle face is further away from the flange on the Silverado than it is the 67. So we had the numbers right. I looked it up. It's like 63 3/4 to the center line of the U-bolt that pokes over the back here. So I'm going to mark the 42 3/4 and, you know, get it centered so I know where this thing's at. Oh, sorry, I said 42. It's 41 3/4. Lost my chalk. All right, so that should be pretty close. So the perches are going to go under here like this on both sides. There's a lot of discussion about where to cut the axle. Let me find one of those perches. All right, so I've got one of these perches here, and it's going to sit on here about right. I guess it's about right there, given the way that thing's shaped, or given where the pinion's pointing. So that's going to sit on there like so. And that's going to sit on there like so. So I think we're going to cut 1/2 inch inside of the line we made at 41 3/4. And that will keep the cut inside the perch, because we're going to weld this perch solid all the way around. That ought to make it good enough. All right, let's get this thing marked out and see if we can cut it. All right, so I found my C-clamps, and my plan is just to get these on here and get them marked out, and we'll cut on one side of the, you know, in this case here, we're going to take 3 inches out. We'll cut on the inside of the C-clamps and call it done. Let me get the flat disc on the grinder, and let's see if we can clean this axle up. Get a nice marking surface. All right, let's see if we can get this marked out. All right, we said we were gonna, you know, we put that first mark at 12 inches, and we're gonna come 1/2 inch. So if I mark out 11 1/2 inches, that ought to work. That's not what I did. I got messed up, didn't I? I need to get my 41 3/4 again. So I got 61 1/4 inside flange to inside flange. So we'll check my gazentas here. I'm thinking that's about 9 3/4 from each end. We'll be a little more precise in measuring it this time. 41 3/4. All right, 41 3/4 is the center line of where the U-bolt comes out the back side of this thing, and we were going to go 1/2 inch inside of that. So that'll put me at 9 1/4. All right, let's see if we can get the first one on there. I just noticed I should have put this C-clamp or this hose clamp on here, because I'm going to cut this section out, and we need 3 inches from that. Same thing on this side. Well, that's pretty close. All right, well, I think we're ready to cut this. Let me get the grinder and the cutoff disc, and we're gonna get after it. All right, you notice I put the angle finder. It was going to be easier just to cut it if I could spin the axle. So I put the angle finder on it, and that way we can still level it up. This is 50.1 degrees. All right, let's get the bar in here. And I guess, yeah, we'll put the bar in. Still got to bevel both ends, but I want to kind of see how we did. I don't know where the camera died, but I got just a little bit of a, that was the last cut. So let me take that down just a little bit. All right. Well, let me see if I can get the camera down. And you can see we got just a little bit of a gap on this end. And the same on the other end. It's about the width, I'd say it's about the width of a saw blade. And we're tight over here. And this one gets tight on the bottom down there. And the gap's at the top. Don't know if I cut it crooked or the axles was a little whoopy. I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's easy enough. I think the one piece that I haven't shown you yet is that when we get this all ready to go together, I had this shaft threaded on both ends. So I'll put a bushing on this with a bolt, and we'll be able to pull everything together before we weld it. All right, let me get this out of here, and let me V-notch all of this, and let me get back with you. All right, well, I got ahead of myself. Let me show you where I'm at. So, got them V-grooved, got some all thread. This rod I had tapped with 1/2" threads. So this helps hold everything together. It's not tight, but it serves the purpose of kind of, when you need 3 hands. And we got it back level again on both ends. Just the gnats, but that'll work. All right, I'm gonna roll it over. I've still got to tack the 4th tack on this thing. So I'm gonna roll it over and I'm gonna get it tacked, and then we're gonna check it out and see if it's straight again. All right, I'm gonna loosen up the nuts. I'm gonna see if that rod still slides. Rod still goes back and forth, so it's not bound up. Let me weld this thing up. Let it cool for a minute, then I'll come back. Well, that was a lot of welding and grinding and welding. I took my time, welded a little bit at a time, let it cool off, and I think it's okay, but the proof in the pudding is whether that stinking, whether that bar comes out of there. If you've got it, if you've got it tweaked, I have had to drive that bar. All right, let me pull my all threads out of the end of the axles, or at least one end, and let's see if we can get this thing out of here. Oh, it's still level too. That way you can hold everything together. That screws in the end of that rod, and that slides over the rod. Keeps everything together. All right, here we go. Well, folks, I can tell you that makes me happy. That really makes me happy. That came out nice. All right. I'm pretty excited. I am pretty excited. I suppose I don't have to tell you, you don't want to mix up these caps. Well, let's have a look at it. So the weld is right here. You can see the factory ain't none too careful in terms of where they, how they weld the brackets. It looks like that's still just a touch high right there. I'll take that down a little more. But we cut it right there. Let's see here. Yep, got this one right here. Looks like I still got a little high on where those brackets were. Yeah, we'll take that down. Well, I'm pretty happy about that. So this thing is going to set. This thing's going to set right there. Oh, I got to grab the other one. There's a left and right. Been all afternoon welding on this thing. I'm happy the bar came out without any problems. But I've been welding on it pretty much all afternoon. Just not wanting to make it do anything funny. So I guess that's a reward for patience, right? Anyway, the cart works good. Like I said, I've used this cart for a lot of things, but by and large, this is what I primarily use it for. Every time I grab it, I hopefully try to improve something on it. I noticed while I was using it today, I need to put some stops on this so the axle will just spin right where it's at. It wants to kind of walk around. But other than that, I like it. All right. I'm going to give you an added bonus here. All right, so it's about to get noisy. Some of you may recognize what this is. This is a paint shaker. Vintage, I think 50s or 60s. It's a Red Devil, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's a Red Devil. I think that was the brand name on them. They were the cat's meow in their day. The problem is they really shake the living tar out of everything, basically. I don't know who owns this now, but there's a spring base that you can buy for it to not jump all around. But the base is like over $300. So I have been chasing for a while to try to figure out how I don't have to buy that base, because I really want to get this mixer run, or this shaker working. So let me flip this on. Now, it ain't perfect, but it doesn't take much to keep that thing where it's at. That is a whole lot better than some of the other iterations I've had. Ah, the can's getting loose. Maybe not. There we go. So, it's not perfect, but I suspect I can bolt that tire down and it won't push, it won't try to shake the table around. That's my thought anyway. Anyway, that's industrial. Let me turn this on. That front tire is off my Kubota. It's just an industrial, actually it's off my son's Kubota. It's off, it's just an industrial front tire. And those legs, it's not mounted to anything. All right, so I didn't take a lot of time because I've had a lot of iterations trying to figure out how to make this thing not bounce all over the place. But basically, it sets on a metal frame. I've got it bolted down on a frame, and I just put some legs that set down over the tire. It's not attached to the tire, but that seems to be almost good enough. It may be good enough, depending on where I can mount that thing. Anyway, these things pop up for sale, and if you don't get the spring base, that thing, that's a problem. Now, I got it. Actually, it was setting on that blue stand. I've got the cutter on, the Harbor Freight cutter we spent all that time trying to get going. And it was mounted solid, and whoever had it before me, their thought was they'll just hold it solid. You can't do that. The weights in it will literally try to tear themselves apart. So when I got it, the weights had come loose, which was probably the best thing that could have happened to it. Anyway, you got to let it vibrate. They sell a $300+ base that is just springs that it sits there. I think my tire is going to work. Anyway, that's your bonus for today. If you run across one of those, they're good paint shakers. Just the mounting's a problem. If you're subscribed, I do appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. Leave a like. I do my best to answer all the comments. Sometimes maybe a day or two later, but I do my best to answer all the comments. Until next time, I'm Random at Random Rod Shop, and we're out of here.